Lep pozdrav vsem.
I would like to welcome you all. As the title explains, the opportunities for the development of microloans in Slovenia. Let me first define microloan, microcrediting, the term as it is known globally. Microfinancing means microloans, micro insurance, micro pension schemes. The main property is of microfinancing. Well, we discuss it in Slovenia as well, but it includes financial and social components. We talk about cooperatives, social entrepreneurship, and microfinancing can be an innovative approach. Of course, there are some preconditions for financing social entrepreneurship and other types of entrepreneurship. But today we are focusing on the first. Let me start with the legislation that somehow defines the implementation, the performance of financial services. There are three categories. If we want to define an approach in Slovenia and how others approach, we should be aware of three categories: banking monopoly in the field of credits and accepting deposits, the banking monopole over the collection of deposits, and the third category, no monopoly. So mainly we talk about the first category in Slovenia. Well, we are not focused today on this issue. On the other hand, we are also talking about cooperatives today. This is the seminar titled Slovenia and Cooperatives. On the other hand, in Slovenia, we have the Act on Cooperatives. The regulation should be adjusted so that things can evolve. What else does the legislation enable? Regulation of microcrediting is well established in France. There was a special forum this year, and it was interesting to see that France is a kind of exception. In the Act on Banking, it enables other institutions to provide loans, credits, as well as Romania, with its Act on microcrediting. So only 2 EU member states know a kind of regulation in this field. I was present in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I was there for a year, so I'm aware of the circumstances there. They have a special act on microcrediting organizations, but it's only an act. Practice is different, not based on social entrepreneurship. There are 23 microcredit organizations. Some work as non-banking institutions, and others are profit organizations. So the only objective they follow is the generation of profit. So there is a compromise to be set. The interest rates in Bosnia, when we talk about microcredit organizations, is 46% at the annual level. And if this is the purpose of social entrepreneurship, loans are intended for classical banking loans, consumers, housing, and so on. But we have microcredit organizations actually dealing with social components. These are the 19 microcredit foundations, women or female entrepreneurship, and other social structures also defined in Slovene legislation. The unemployed, low-income persons, young people, newly employed persons. So these are social categories that we should support with microloans. Currently, the state provides a lot of funds to deal with social issues, but the purpose of microcrediting is to provide funds for example, education, training. These funds provided by the state should be used in a better way, because this should be an innovative way of tackling social issues. Secondly, regulations. This perception of interest rate being very high in Bosnia, for example, this is generally acknowledged in relation to microcredit. Groningen Bank in Bangladesh, they do not object to a higher interest rate. We have to deal, in this case, with low amounts of loan, but the portfolio is 1 million of loans. So microcredit institution can have a higher interest rate, but the question is how to manage operating costs. If we obtain funds at a low price, it's great, superb. And if we manage them well, there will not be any problems. But if we offer a low interest rate to our clients that are somehow the beneficiaries of these funds, we can threaten the operation of a microcredit institution in the long run. If we stop to exist, we have stopped to support this segment. Some people, on the other hand, talk about vulnerable groups, and there is a risk. And not only bankers. Well, I was asking people, are you willing to invest money into this? If you don't believe in this idea of social entrepreneurship, you have no full picture, meaning what can be done with these funds. So everything can come to a standstill. And globally, the solution of social problems can be successful due to innovative approaches. And this can be enabled by this kind of crediting. Interest rates can have different definitions. A microcrediting organization is a kind of a bank, can't be anything else. The performance of microcrediting in Europe, who is this performed by? Banking and non-banking institutions, commercial banks, saving banks, cooperative banks, and financial cooperatives. Why have I written down this? We used to have cooperative agricultural bank. On the other hand, we have the Act on Cooperatives that does not provide for cooperative banks. So this has to be tackled. If this is successfully addressed, things can evolve. We just need to believe in it and manage funds well. We have to attract the state so that it can identify the benefits. Cooperative banks, financial cooperatives, foundations, and not-for-profit organizations. I'm talking about things globally, but mainly focusing on Europe. Financial cooperatives and cooperative banks. A lot has already been said, but some things are so important concerning banking cooperatives or... So let me define the most important values once again. We discussed them at various levels where projects are carried out. Most of these projects of financial cooperatives are performed at the local level. These are local initiatives, and these projects provide financial and non-financial support. Non-financial support means education and training. So you monitor somebody you provided money to. So we not only measure the financial, but also the social impact. This is unavoidable. This is also the requirement of the EU. I was invited by the ministry. There is a special fair going on right now at these premises. So we have to monitor. And there is no doubt that the funds have to be managed. We have to manage the risk. We have to behave professionally as a bank. Microfinancing could be started at the local level, because probably a pilot project would be needed. This is a precondition. There are a lot of municipalities in Slovenia, many of them, and every mayor has some ideas. I could see this in Bančna Gorica. There was a day of craft and entrepreneurship. Our prime minister was there and we talked, and he said, exactly, in the next financial perspective, microfinancing has been already stressed. The emphasis was placed, but we do not possess the right approaches. We need a model that would combine the state's money and other funds, will deal with social issues, and at the same time, it will have some return. Some yield has to be granted. The profit itself is not a problem. We need to utilize it for the right things. But in addition, we want to employ this many people. People with low income are to be helped and so on. And at the micro level, this can be addressed. And the approach is already presented at this day of craft and entrepreneurship. We know that the initiatives are present, but things have still to change. Main characteristics. In addition to local orientation, we've mentioned that members, I'm talking about a financial cooperative now. Members are investors. We are talking about equity. They are clients of this institution, banking and non-banking products, and this is very important, especially in the times of crisis, because they can influence more the operations of this institution. There are still financial experts, of course, but in the next step, it is important to ensure higher capital adequacy, stable revenue, and better rating. We discussed yesterday what is going on. You know that there is a crunch in this banking sector. I will not talk about these things in general. Banking crunch. Although there are good projects, that was the information shared. Well, although there are funds, they lack good projects. And then I raised the question, why do you think this is happening, that loans are not provided? Fear. Of course, if a snake has bitten you, you will be afraid of every rope. So the funds are available. I'm not talking about mass funds. Now, financial cooperatives, they have a better capital adequacy, more stable revenue, and better credit rating. Now, the values. Without trust, we can't function. Mutual trust in our mission. Trust is insufficient. We need financial expertise as well. Management is participatory, and that grants better transparency. We are talking about a bad bank, and there is no amount mentioned, so the citizens will have to participate actively with our money. Investing into clients who are members. The client is always in the center. We make sure that funds trigger evolution and development. We are talking about microfinancing. We are more resistant in financial terms and more literate. So you gain new knowledge, and it is easier for you to make new decisions. What else is important? I will summarize them in a couple of points. A financial cooperative. So what creates long-term values? There are three parts. Direct value for members, products and services offered to all members, consultancy service, mutual communication, the flow of information. And today we have already talked about dividends, indirect value for a member. So members participate, and it's not only the dividend, but when in trouble, it is the responsibility of a member to provide equity. So something bad happens, we are running out of capital adequacy, and we are in trouble. So I'm talking about trust again. The first and the second reflects some sustainable value of the institution for the members. If we cannot continue our mission because we grant loans at a too low price, we will not be sustainable. We will see later on how things will evolve in Slovenia. This is unknown to us still. Let me now emphasize something that was said in Paris. What was microfinancing originally? To fight poverty and to support social inclusion of groups that cannot enjoy the products of the banking sector in general, traditionally. If we try to measure the approach to financial services in France, it is different from less developed world. In Slovenia as well, I was surprised by this fact. There are 3% of population with no account in a bank. The approach in Europe is different from less developed parts of the world. and products are somehow similar. We are always, well, there are always groups. For example, Brussels. In Brussels, there are immigrants, and there is a special microfinancing organization in Belgium. There are immigrants, and there is 30% unemployment rate among them. In France, they deal with Roma population, with the Roma people, but there should be somebody else working on these people, not the banks. A risk. There are special instruments to protect against this risk. So the joint goal is to fight poverty, and this applies to Slovenia as well as more developed world. Main emphasis of microcrediting in Slovenia. In EU, this area has not been standardized. Non-banking institutions should be enabled support. The support should be provided to vulnerable groups, but this requires a minimal regulatory framework. There are two acts, the Act on Banks and the Act on Cooperatives. So we need a framework for the establishment of banking cooperatives or financial cooperatives. In this crisis, this would really be welcome because it could interconnect various layers and social groups and sources of capital. Of course, we cannot do it without all the stakeholders who need to believe into the development of microcrediting. This is as much as I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.